right. Hello, hello.
Hey,
We are live on the internet. Look at us. All right. So, very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Thank you for joining us wherever it is that you're tuning in from, or maybe if you're watching this at a later time, hello from the past. I'm your host, Sam Basu here. Welcome back to the Pragmatic AI with .NET show. We do this every other Thursday. And, AI is changing how we do a lot of things, especially building software. But beyond the hype, this show is all about real people doing real things with AI. And today, I'm delighted to have my good friend, Eric Boyd, with me. Eric, how are you doing, sir?
hey, Sam. I'm doing great. I'm doing great, man. How
Awesome.
are you?
Awesome. I am good. Why don't you start with a quick introduction as
Oh,
to
sure.
who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So I'm Eric Boyd. I have been in tech for probably 30 years now. So I started way back in the 90s with kind of web design and working in the .com days for a .com and owned a software company. And today I run a consultancy and have since 2012, focused on helping customers build kind of disruptive solutions, applications, products, usually kind of massively scalable distributed systems that run in Azure. So when I started the company responsiveX back in 2012, we focused on, and our mission was to really to help customers do that digital innovation sort of stuff with Azure. And so for the last 14 years, we have done tons and tons of Azure projects, and everything we've done has to do with Azure. So generally things at kind of mass scale, product development, AI solutions, IoT solutions, things like that. So yeah, that's what I do.
Okay.
And
Cool.
lately, I've been helping engineering teams kind of rethink how the software factory works by plugging in AI into that. And so that's been
Yeah,
a lot of fun.
it's a wild time, right? I think we have not had this much fun building software in a long time, but we also have to watch out for all the things that are evolving, and how we stay grounded and actually deliver value. So, Eric, you are also you mentioned Azure. You have been in the Microsoft space for a long time. You're a Microsoft MVP and an RD, so I see you at a lot of the same events. So thank you for all that you do for the community. And before we jump in, I know we are going to talk about AI and SpecKit, but I also want to know what people are up to. So I see live audience members. So please chime in chat anytime. Maybe let's start with where you're tuning in from. Always fun to see. And then this is an informal conversation. So anytime we are talking about something that you have a question about, just fire away in chat and I'll ask Eric. Okay, so Eric, how is AI changing the way you folks build software?
Yeah, so it's pretty significant. Um, for the longest time, we have gone down this path. I feel like of saying, the source of truth in our software is the code, and the whole agile kind of movement, whether that's XP, Scrum, like whatever frameworks and methodologies you're using, um, kind of drove us down this path of we want to deliver stuff really fast and iteratively and not spend a lot of time on requirements up front because the world changes around us too fast to do that. And instead, the code will be the source of truth. Now, I don't think inherently that's bad, but I think what we did was we pushed it to kind of an extreme and lost sight of the fact that it might still be useful to like understand what you're building and write that down, right? Uh, and so I don't think that was ever the intent of all of those agile sort of movements. And I'm still a huge fan of delivering things iteratively and in an agile sort of fashion. So what it has caused us to rethink and ground is going back to, I really need to write down what it is that I'm doing, type it up, what it is that I'm doing first. Because now when I have that really well defined, I can go ask, AI to help me build that thing and accelerate it. And so I've spent more time in the last, I don't know, 12 months writing English in Markdown files than I have probably writing code. I've spent a lot of time reviewing code, but actually
Hmm.
writing it is not what I've spent the most of my time doing, which
Yeah.
is just wild. But to your point in like your intro, I'm having so much fun doing this too. Like I'm creating cool stuff really fast and with great quality. So yeah, it's been a blast.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. It's, so enticing to just, start coding, right? But, to your point, like it makes sense to just slow down and make sure you know exactly what you're building. And
Yeah,
then especially, AI accelerates this whole thing. Like just start from a prompt and you're going to one shot a whole app. Like, no, you don't. Like there is still a craftsmanship towards building good software. So let's get into it. Yeah, good to see folks from the other side of the pond. Hey, David, ciao from Italy. Eric is in the Chicago area, so Central Time in the Americas. I'm in Pennsylvania, so East Coast time. So magic of tech, we're all here together. So Eric, Spec Kit. I know you are a fan, and you talk about this quite a bit. So, shall we start with what is it? And shall I bring up your desktop?
yeah, sure. I'll start by I think I just pulled up a slide that I have, and I have a couple that I can reference throughout that I've used in various presentations. But this one is great for me to ground the conversation. So I remember last about this time last year, I was at Microsoft's MVP Summit. You mentioned MVP, and I've been an Azure MVP for 15 years now, and I'm also an AI or Microsoft Foundry MVP. And so I was at MVP Summit about this time last year, March of last year, and all the rage, everybody wanted to use the phrase vibe coding all the time. And it was because of this tweet. Andrei Karpathy posted this and coined this term in February of 2025. So this has been a year ago, and it feels like an eternity now. It feels like we've been talking about vibe coding forever. That's how fast this space is moving, and how quickly things are aging. But the vibe coding thing um, kind of broke down really fast. And the reason I've heard so many ways to explain it, but the the basic like thought process, I'm going to show one more thing here, is you're going through this process of saying, let me give a prompt to an AI coding agent or some agent, whatever it may be, in fact. um, it's going to take action and do something, in this case generate some code. I'm going to get a response back, so I'm going to get this code back. I'm going to look at it and be like, yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking of, but it's not exactly what I was thinking of. So then I'm going to tweak it and give it another prompt. And we're just going to keep looping through that over and over and over again. And in this process, there's frustrating things that happen. There's exciting things that happen too, but there's frustrating things that happen, which is I make a tweak to this, it goes and changes something. And it's almost like, when you have collateral damage, when you change some code and it affects something you didn't expect, well, then you get back a result that's like, well, no, 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 I liked that thing over there, but you changed that. That's not what I wanted you to do. I wanted you to just change this. And so you're just like chasing your tail all the time in this vibe coding sort of way. So if you've got something small that you're just cranking out, you don't care about exactly the implementation, and or maybe it's just like a small tweak, great, chat in your AI coding agent and have it make some tweaks. But this is where I think getting to good requirements or specs make all the sense in the world before actually handing it off to a kind of an AI coding agent. And I've heard people
Yeah.
refer to this as like a slot machine too. So I mentioned like the exciting things. I've heard people say things like, it's like pulling the handle or pushing the button on a slot machine, and like sometimes you hit and it's like, yes, that's exciting, and you get that like dopamine rush, and then there's all the other times in between that it's like, oh, that's not exactly what I want. You keep going, right?
Oh, it's
So,
funny. You mentioned slot machine. I heard initially slop machine. So I'm like,
oh,
no,
well,
it's
that
AI slop.
that could be true too. Um, and I think part of the problem is actually it's a human problem. Um, when we're thinking about building software, oftentimes uh, we we have this idea that people like read our minds in our teams, and it's not that they read our minds, it's that they know us and they kind of know how we're thinking about things. They know our preferences. They, whatever it may be. We've worked with a team of folks all the time, and so we can ask somebody to do something, and they're going to ground that in all of the context they have about us and our
Yeah.
conversation in the organization and stuff like that. The AI agents don't have that, and unless we intentionally give it to them. And so
Yeah.
we ask them to go do something, it uses whatever it thinks is best.
Yeah. And you said a key word in there, context. That is key to everything. So more guardrails, the more context we provide, the better the outcome.
Yep, exactly. So I went down this path a while back, and I thought, you know what, let's just play with it a little bit. And so I'll show you a couple of things real quickly before I get into Spec-Kit. But uh, we have a cobbler's shoes problem at responsiveX. We're so busy working on customer things that if you browse to responsiveX.com, our website is, from like 2012, and so it's terrible, and it's dog slow. Like, we help people build super fast scalable solutions, and this website that runs on WordPress is like not that. So I thought, you know what, I could just AI this thing up and deliver it. And so I said, hey, here's what we do. Here's our current website. It's slow and outdated. Like, build a new one for us. And so this is just me kind of vibe coding in GitHub Copilot. And so you'll see it goes down this path of saying, okay, cool, I'll build you a fast modern website. I'm going to use Next.js, and we'll use TypeScript and Tailwind and all these sorts of things. And it's like, no, like, I don't want to use Next.js. Like, I really want to use another framework because I don't know anything about that. And it went down the path of building me like a cool site. Like, okay, that's kind of cool. It missed things like that's not my logo and things like that, right? So it did some things poorly. I actually went back and said, hey, I need you to use like my logo and stuff like that instead of that placeholder, and said, here's where you can go find that. It finally, it did it. So I'm kind of going back and forth with it in this vibe coding sort of way. And so it's continuing to improve it over time, and I make all sorts of improvements to that. But I ran this thing a couple of times, the same prompt, and another time I ran it, it chose something totally different. And so if you understand the way LLMs work, it's just saying, hey, here's some possible options that we could choose from. Here's the possible next tokens. From that, let's like randomly choose one of those so we keep it creative, right? If we chose the same thing every time, it would just be boring. And so then the next iteration is that let's build it with Astro, which actually is way closer to what I would really want to do. Instead of Next.js, like, I would really want to use something like Astro. So it's interesting, those kinds of things, but that's how you get to that slot machine sort of behavior and the challenges.
Yeah. It's a non-deterministic probability machine.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah. And in fact, the model to model, I ran this also multiple times with different models, and model to model, I got all sorts of wildly different results. So this is different than the last one. This is different as well. Like, I went back to like 1999. I think I used Gemini or something here. I used Grok over here, and I got something like this again. I feel like I'm in 1999. And so it's interesting, like, just the variations, but I don't have a way to really run that thing over and over again without just kind of starting fresh and typing another prompt in the in the agent window and saying go again, right? It'd be nice if I had a way to say, okay, well, I'm gonna try this with some variation or something like that. And so that's where I think this idea of specs come into play. So I'm a big fan of going from vibe coding, instead of thinking about it in this vibe coding way. Think about it like we really think about software. And so if I think about these kinds of things, I've got requirements and architecture and design and breaking down that work, and then we're going to do the real work of building it, and then we'll test and review. And so I think that's the right way to do it. And I think spec-driven development kind of gets us closer to that. So Spec-Kit is one of those ways to do that. There's various tools out there. There's OpenSpec. There's all sorts of other things out there. But a couple of folks from GitHub last year went down this path of they needed to do this internally for stuff that they were building at GitHub. And so then they just open source this kind of spec-driven development kit that they referred to as Spec Kit. And so I'm a huge fan. It's one of the creators is no longer at Microsoft. Sadly, he's no longer at
Are
GitHub.
you talking Dan?
Yeah, exactly.
Demarsky? Yeah.
Yep. So he has since moved on to Anthropic. He's super deep into MCP and stuff like that as well, and so he's moved on to Anthropic. But
So
it's
this,
still
by
being
the way,
maintained
yeah.
at Microsoft.
Sorry, this is the URL, by the way, folks, of what Eric is talking about.
Oh
SpecKit.
yeah, sorry, I just
No,
scrolled
no,
through
it's all good. That's my
like
job.
crazy.
So you're saying like this started with the GitHub folks?
Yeah, it came out of GitHub. So it was
Hmm.
John Lamb and them, and they created this thing. And if you look back at the commits, you're going to see them all over that. And and now it's actually being actively maintained by a team inside of Microsoft today. So it's you can see these are commits an hour ago, still going on to this repo.
Hmm.
So it's actively being maintained. There's all sorts of new stuff, which also makes this like feel like a slot machine. Every time I run it, it automatically pulls in like the latest version, and it's like I have no idea what changes from time to time when I run this thing, which is exciting and challenging
Yeah.
too. But
What happens with AI is the only thing that could have happened in that pass.
yeah, exactly. So if you go to the SpecKit repo, then there's the link over here that will take you to the docs that come out of this repo, and so that takes you to a page like this. Um, there is also a page that is speckit.org. I don't really know. This is associated. It was created by uh, uh, John and Den, but I don't know if this is actively being maintained because it
Hmm.
certainly feels stale. So I'm not sure. It's still out there. Just know that it exists if you bump into it. But really, this these docs are probably closer to being the real actively maintained things. So
Yeah.
yeah. So, what is SpecKit? I guess that's I mentioned spec-driven development, getting that vibe coding slot machine out of the equation. Well, the idea of SpecKit is really simple. I'm going to show up one more slide just to lay down some foundations. Um, the first thing that we want to do when thinking about building software and product is explaining the outcome, the goals of what we're trying to build. So in the spec-driven development or spec kit world, we refer to that as a spec. So that's the just the business requirements, not technology implementations, truly just the business requirements and the outcomes that we want. From there, we want to create a plan as well. So we first want to go through the process of creating a spec. So spec kit helps us by we can prompt it and say, hey, I want to create a feature to do XYZ or a product to do XYZ. It's going to ask us questions about that. And it's going to fill in any assumptions or ambiguities with real stuff. So one of the things that's challenging with large language models is they are really designed to make us happy and respond with a response that we like. And so when it doesn't know something, it just plugs and fills in that missing space with something that it thinks is reasonable. And sometimes that's not what we want. And so the spec phase in SpecKit, which is referred to as like the kind of specify phase, that's where we're going to lay down all those business requirements and try to wring that out and make sure it has all of those.
Yeah, you are laying down some, nuggets of wisdom here. So the large language models are often here to impress us, not to build the right thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's
So
dangerous.
yeah. So let me ask a question here. So you're kind of flipping the script here because if you look at traditional water flow, and maybe it wasn't done the right way, where you start from some requirements, right? So your PM or your analyst comes up with a requirement of this is what the software is supposed to do, but then that gets kind of thrown away as you get in the weeds of coding. So now you're saying, no, the spec is what drives my software and stays on throughout the life cycle?
Yeah, so it's there's various views on this, but my view is that the thing that should live now forever is my spec.
Hmm.
It is because it's me explaining the intent of what I'm trying to accomplish. And so, in a lot of the agile uh, frameworks and methodologies, we said, well, that is going to be done with unit tests. Like we will get to really enforce and explain the intent in all of our testing, and that's still true. Like that's important, but I need a way to really express that so the large language models can understand what to do with that when I want to build stuff. And so for me, the spec is the thing that's going to live forever. So English, I don't want to go down the path of saying the AI coding agents are compilers because they're not. They are these probabilistic, non-deterministic things that will translate English into some output. So it's not exactly a compiler, but in some ways you can draw some similarities to that of like English is the thing that I want to do, and then on the other side I'm going to output code. And I use English. It doesn't have to be English, but English is predominantly the popular language in working with these things because of various things. Like one, just quality of the outputs, but also token size in English is much smaller than
Hmm.
many other languages that have so many other characters. Uh,
Right.
so so yeah, I'm laying it down. I'm keeping the spec forever. It's the long living thing that describes my software. And if I ever want to regenerate it, I can. So if I wanted to change versions of something, or I wanted to change the services I'm using, for example, maybe I at some point say I no longer want to use Azure App Service for my application. Instead, I want to run it on containers in AKS. Cool. I just change that detail and then go run it again.
Hmm. So, how is the one last question? I know I'm stopping you from moving forward, but
You're good.
when you start with a prompt and you like, let's say you're just building a big feature, it's always recommended, by the way, folks, like almost all AI coding tools, they have a plan mode, which is what Eric was talking about. Let them plan it out, because otherwise it's just going to guess the assumptions, and that's not cool. So in that plan, the AI agents are essentially doing the legwork of iteratively asking you what is it that you want to build, get all the details, and then they get to work. But here you're saying you're going to define the plan upfront.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm gonna create the spec up front, and then after that, I'm gonna go down the path of creating an implementation plan or a technical plan with that spec in mind. So spec's my business requirement. My plan is going to be my technical implementation, and the details for that, and then that's going to be the foundations for what I'm going to build. So you want to just see it in action?
Yeah,
All
please.
right, cool. So over here on SpecKit, it says, hey, how do we install this thing? There's an installation guide. I've already got it installed, of course, but it uses the UV tool in the Python
Hmm.
ecosystem, and so you need that. It's just a package manager. It has the prereqs here, so you can do it from anywhere: Windows, Linux, Mac. You also are going to need. It's not a coding agent, so it uses whatever coding agent you want to use, and so you're going to need a coding agent: Claude Code, GitHub Copilot, Gemini, whatever it may be, and there's support for tons of them. And then Python, because you have to use UV, of course, and it also uses Git throughout, so you need to have Git installed. Then you can use UV in two ways. So you can say, I just want to run a want to run it one time. And so just like npm, you have like
But
npx, where you can say just
NPX.
run this, or you have the same sort of thing in Python. UVX does the same thing for a package manager. It's just like, I just want to run this thing one time.
Yeah.
So that's what that's doing.
Yeah.
Uh,
And .NET has caught up as well. Now we have
oh
DNX.
yeah, that's right.
Hmm.
That's right. And yeah, I do that with like the .NET tool install, like sort of like I use tools like that, which is cool. Um, and then you just install it from the repo. I can just say, hey, I want to install from this location a specific version, or just give me whatever kind of latest is here, and install it and run the specify command to get started. And so this will do it without actually installing it on my machine. I have it
Mhm.
installed. If you just omit the X here and just say, hey, UV from here, then that's going to install it on your machine, which is what I've done. So I've got it over here and I'm in a directory already. I've just created just so you know, I'm not doing any smoke and mirrors sort of stuff. This is the directory that I'm going to be in inside of VS Code. And so there's nothing in here yet. The only thing I've done is I've initialized a Git repo. And I do that ahead of time because I don't know why, but for some reason, when I let SpecKit initialize the whole thing with the repo, it names my main branch master, and so I don't want that, and so because everything else I do I refer to it as main these days, and so I just initialize the repo myself to begin with instead of letting SpecKit do that.
All right, two quick. Sorry to slow you down again, but
Yeah.
if you bring up VS Code again, I'm just always curious about other people's setups.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you are actually on the latest builds, right? So the green
yeah,
one,
yeah.
and you have quite a list of extensions. So do you mind just popping over the left panel
Man,
to show us all the things you got?
I have way too many extensions. So let me
Yeah.
start there. Uh, I have tons. Uh, I actually one of the things that I really love about VS Code, and I use it all the time, is this
Profile,
profiles. And so I
yeah.
use it a lot when I demo. So I have a demo that's like dark. I have a
Hmm.
demo that's light, and that it zooms everything in, so I can change all the sizes of things.
Yeah, yeah.
In this case,
Really nice feature.
I'm not gonna use that, but I have all sorts
Yeah.
of things in here. So I have Open API. I spend a lot of time helping customers design APIs. And so I'm a huge fan of the Open API extensions. So you'll see that in here. I have GitLens and then I have
GitHub Cloud.
Claude
Hmm.
Code in here. I have a bunch of Python things because I do a lot of
Mm.
Python work as well. Microsoft Foundry,
Yeah,
Kubernetes, and then even more things like the
even
AI
more. Yeah,
toolkit, and various things, Azure DevOps and stuff
yeah.
like that. So
Good
yeah,
stuff. Good
I have
stuff.
lots
So
of things in here, but I encourage folks to definitely check out
yeah.
profiles, and also sync your settings so that you can
Hmm.
use it across multiple devices and
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah,
So
it's a beautiful world. Everything syncs, and I love the profiles thing because, like, it's unlikely that you're going to need all of these extensions all in that one
right,
session. So just separate it out. Stays
yes,
clean.
yeah,
And then one last thing here. I'm sure you might actually get into this in a bit, but chat room is asking, code for it is asking, does it take into account architectural constraints like vertical slices or layers? So I'll let you
yes,
speak to this when
yeah.
you're ready.
So we can give it uh, whatever guidance we want. And so I give it guidance on here's how I want my project structured, because it's going to fill in the gaps on its own if you don't tell it exactly what you want. And so I encourage folks to, be very explicit and intentional with here's how I like to structure my projects. I don't want classes suffixed with things like DTO or helper or manager or whatever that guidance is. I want things to be named clearly in a single responsibility sort of way. Create my object model like that. Here's how I want my APIs structured. All of those sorts of things we can provide it, and I'll talk about how we can give it that context. But that's just context we would stuff into the
Yep.
coding agent. It's not a spec kit thing necessarily. So yeah. All right. So let me just kind of new this up. So I have already done the UV thing. I've got it installed, and so and this is changed. I'm not sure if it's even updated in the docs, but it used to be that you would say specify init, and you could do that, and then it'll go through the process of asking you, well, where do you want to initialize this new project and things like that. I'm already in the directory that I want to use, and so I'm using the dash dash here. Let me zoom in a little bit so we can see this. I'm using dash dash here. And then the next option used to be dash dash AI. So I said, this is a slot machine too. Every time you run this, who knows what's changed? This is one of those changes that's happening right now. So if you see it in the docs where it says dash dash AI, this is telling it what AI coding agent to use. And so I'm going to use
Hmm.
GitHub Copilot, but I could tell it to use Claude Code or Gemini or something like that too. And I'll explain why that's important in just a minute. And then the last thing is, I'm going to use PowerShell. So my scripts that it creates. So SpecKit is really just a set of markdown files and a set of scripts. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. But I can tell it what format I want to use for these scripts. Do I want them to be PowerShell? Do I want them to just be shell, bash scripts, that sort of thing? So here I've said use PowerShell because I'm going to run from Windows. That's the thing I know and love. I don't want to be grepping and awking and all that sort of stuff, right? So we'll just do the specify init. And so it's saying, hey, my current directory is not empty. And that's because I have a .git directory in there for my Git repo that I've already created. Do I want to continue? Yep. And so then it does some things. Let's go back up and scroll back up and see what it did. I'm going to zoom in here for just a second. And so it said, my specify project setup, I'm going to use this project. I'm going to use this working path. That's where I am on my local system. And then it said, I selected my AI assistant Copilot. If I didn't put those in that init command, it would have asked me those things. And it said, hey, I selected PowerShell because you told me to do that too. Then it does a check. Do I have everything that's needed? Yep. Do I have the AI assistant that I told it to use? Yes, in fact, Copilot is installed. And so it goes through all that and it gives me a green light. Yeah, I'm ready to go. Then I come down here and it has all these other things. So it says, okay, here's where you can get started. So you've already got your project directory. Now you have these options to get started. You can use these kind of slash commands, or in the Copilot CLI, you now say use this agent. And so you specify the agent. So I can use this from either VS Code or I can use it from the Copilot CLI. They both work. And so these are the things that I can run. I can say, establish my project principles and a constitution. We haven't talked about that yet, but I'll come back to that in just a minute. Or I can just start creating my specification by using that specify, the 2.2 specify. And here's the other options. I mentioned the technical plan and tasks, and we'll talk about all that in just a little bit. But let's go down that path of creating our specification. So I mentioned I can do it from either VS Code or Copilot CLI. If I want to do it from the Copilot CLI, I have to launch Copilot. So I'm going to just type in Copilot here, and that's going to launch GitHub Copilot for me. And then I can't use the slash commands like it said in that doc. If I do this, it doesn't. GitHub Copilot doesn't know what that is. At one point it did. It supported this, but today you have to say I want to use an agent, and so I type in /agent. And then here's all the agents that I can use from this context. And so I can arrow through this, or and then just select the thing I want to do. In this case,
interesting. So it treats the SpecKit things as agents for you to invoke stuff.
Exactly. So it thinks I have these agents, what we used to call like chat modes in VS Code. We're now calling agents, and so that's what this is showing here, is all of those kind of agent prompts or chat modes that I have. And so I have specify here, and so I want to do this. Like, let's create a spec, and I'll start here, and then I'll move over to VS Code. Sam, what should we create? What kind of cool product should we create today?
Coffee list app.
Oh, coffee list app. So what is this thing going to do? I love coffee, so that's great.
List out drinks at a coffee shop.
Yeah. I want a web app that will show me possible espresso drinks using different beans, syrups, I don't know, ratios of espresso to milk, etc., for selecting a coffee drink in a coffee shop. Sound good?
Yeah.
All right. So now it's thinking. This is going to use a large language model behind the scenes to help me write this thing up, right? And so it's doing its thing. It's trying to create my my spec for me, but just from that prompt, like nothing wild.
So can I ask a question here?
Yeah.
If you were to do this inside of VS Code or any other IDE, would you find the wax specify as a command?
Yes. And so I'll show you that in just a minute, but yes, you would find that.
And so, just as you do here in Copilot, you can also choose which model, large language model you're using.
Right. And so here you'll see I have all of those
Hmm.
slash commands uh, right inside of VS Code because that init call like bootstrap this for me. And so now what I have over here inside of VS Code, these didn't exist before. I just had an empty repo, but now I have this .github directory, .specify, and .vs Code. VS Code is just some settings in here. I'll
Yep.
expand that out so we can see it. It's just saying, hey, here's kind of what to do, and here's the where my scripts are and things like that. So that's not super important, but what's in the specify directory is the magic. And so if I look in here, you'll see I mentioned PowerShell scripts earlier. These are PowerShell scripts that the SpecKit tool is using to do various things throughout, like, doing some Git interactions, like creating branches and things like that. You'll also find it's storing memory because it has to maintain, you mentioned context earlier, we have to maintain memory for our context throughout what we're doing. And so here's some memory that it's creating with the constitution.markdown file, and I'll look at that in just a little bit. And then I have these various templates. And so these templates are what make the magic work. That's what makes those slash commands work. So I'm going to look at the spec one for just a second. And you'll see here in, oh, that's not what I wanted. In the spec template, it's saying, hey, this is how we're going to approach this. Like, we're going to take in this prompt. So you'll see the input, the user description. That's what we just did from the GitHub Copilot CLI. And then from that, it's going to create this feature specification with a feature name. It's going to format it in this way with a number on the front. So those 3 pound signs or hash symbols on line 3 is saying, here's how we're going to name the branch that we're going to use. So we're having an incrementing number followed by a descriptive name. We have the date for it and all sorts of things in here
Hmm.
that we'll see. So it's going to break down user stories for us in our spec. And all of this is just part of this markdown file of how we want to express our spec. We could actually change this template. There's nothing kind of sacred about it. If we wanted to structure something in a slightly different way, for example, we don't want our branches named like this, we could change that and it would follow that. This is what's going to the LLM to do all this sort of
Yeah.
stuff.
And it's what it's going to produce is exactly the kind of things that agents like to see, like the whole breakdown of stories and feature wise. Now, all of these templates, like you mentioned, like they come pre-baked in SpecKit.
Yes, yeah. So that is
Right.
that's the magic of what SpecKit
Mm.
is doing. And so I just had to confirm something here that said, hey, do you want to run that? And I do want to run this. And so I'm letting it do its thing and creating the spec. But what we'll see here is it's going to do some Git things for us. So right now you're seeing we are in that main repo, or sorry, main branch in our repo, but it's going to create a feature branch for us for the spec as part of that. So it's yes and approve for the rest. I should have just run this thing in like, YOLO mode,
YOLO.
but it's going down this path of creating this branch for us.
So for folks in the chat room, like the way Eric launched it, Copilot, you could say dash dash YOLO, or once you're already in, then you could say, I think it's called allow dash all. But do so at your own risk, because
Right.
do it in a container, because then you are giving the agent full liberty to do and not ask you, not bother you over and over again to
Yep.
run a tool, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And so everything that it has to do that it thinks like might be a potential security elevated permissions sort of thing, like do I want to run this script on the file system, do I want to be able to write files to the file system, it's going to prompt me and ask me, hey, do I want to allow that to happen? And so at each step of the way I'm telling it, yes, go ahead. And I should have just said, let this thing run for in this YOLO mode to auto approve.
Yeah, I mean, you hear these fun stories that AI agents dropped a production database because they probably thought it's the right thing to do. But again, those are up to us to not allow it to do stuff like that. Do
Yeah.
it in a containerized way so that you're okay with all the things that it has the creativity and the liberty to do whatever it thinks right within.
So you're starting to see some things happen behind the
Yeah.
scenes here too. So you can see my branch just changed. So I've got 001. It named my
Mm-hmm.
feature Espresso Drink Explorer. So it's using its LLM creative capabilities to summarize this one line that I gave it into a feature name and all that good stuff. And then it's creating stuff over here for us. So it's taking a second to do that. It's actually running slower than it normally does for me. So it's interesting.
I mean, you're
There we
also
go.
screen sharing and all that stuff. Yeah.
That's true. So I'm going to say, yeah, go ahead, create and edit this file. So we're going to see these things show up over here. And then that's going to give me my spec. So I'm going to let that go on for a second. Let me go back to kind of the slides that we were looking at. Actually, before I do that, let me pull this off to the side in case it needs some more prompting. Or approvals rather. So earlier we were looking at this slide where I talked about the spec. Well, I showed a couple of other slash commands that exist. So now once I have the spec, it's going to be those business requirements. But now I need to lay down the technical plan. And so I want to create an app that helps me choose espresso drinks. But if I just let it run with that, it's going to use Next.js and all these. And maybe that's not what I want to do. Maybe I want React. And so I can prompt it and tell it, here, use this as the implementation for this. Here's how I want things structured. Here are the services that I want to use to support this. Maybe I want to deploy it to Azure, and I want to use Azure App Service for the runtime. I want to use Azure Blob Storage for putting images of, the coffee drinks or something like that. I want to use Cosmos DB to store whatever data that I might have. So I can give it that detail down to like, here's how I want my classes named, and here's how I want my
Mm-hmm.
project structured and things like that. So that would be my technical plan. And it's going to walk me through some of that process too.
Yeah.
All right.
So on that front, quick question here. Like, where do you draw the line between how much you want to put in the clarify versus things that maybe your devs can change up on the fly? So like between like having skills that kind of further guide the agent, or having instruction files which might have some of your coding guidelines. So where's the balance for you?
Yeah, great question. So I'm going to build this just a little bit more because there's something else I'm going to show you here. So on the left-hand side, you'll see this idea of a constitution, this cross-cutting sort of piece. And this is where I can say these are the ground rules that I always want you to apply.
Mm,
And so I always want to use React. I always want to name things like this, whatever those rules are that I always want to apply. You want to be very careful about that because you may not want to always apply things.
mhm.
And so you really just want to put the absolutes of this is always the way it's going to be in that constitution. But
Yep.
because this is just using a normal like coding agent, I can have, if I had skills, I could have skills up here in my, .github directory. So if I had a skill for doing front end design, which does
Yep.
exist, I could have that in my GitHub directory. So for example, I could say apm install, what is the Anthropics skills front end.
Front end design.
I don't think
Yeah.
that's what it's called, but
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I get the idea.
whatever it is, I could bring it in here and use that,
Yeah.
and it would use that because I'm just using GitHub Copilot over here. So I'm gonna just quickly take a peek at. This is another extension that I like markdown previews that I have inside of VS Code that I love. Um, so this is what it created. So
Oh, look at that.
from this, it went through here and said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to browse and filter espresso drinks. This is what we expect. So this is your moment to make sure that what it dreamed up, the gaps that it filled in, are what you really want. And whatever might not be what you want, then just come over here and edit the
Hmm.
markdown to be the exact features that you want. because this is what we're going to build on. So we're saying, hey, I'm going to browse and filter espresso drinks. Here's my second user story. I'm going to view the drink detail. I'm going to adjust preferences, no setup, all these things. And here's edge cases. And then here's functional requirements that it decided. So I must display a catalog of all available drinks upon ordering with no filters, things like that. Here are the entities. I'm going to create an espresso drink entity, bean, syrup, milk ratio category, and on and on. So
Yeah.
assumptions that it may have, things like that.
It's amazing, all from a single prompt.
All from like, how many characters? Not very many.
Yeah.
169 characters. We created all of that. But
Mm.
you have to make sure that this is right, because remember, it's going to fill in any gaps with whatever it dreams up. But it's helpful in doing that. It also creates a checklist for us. And so this is what it did, or what it's doing as part of the spec. So it's saying, hey, there's no implementation detail for this, and it walks through the process when it creates that spec. And so you can see all these things checked. This is what it did as part of that spec template. It worked through this and made sure it did all of these things. And so this is the magic of what Spec Kit's bringing. If you want to add new things to this, you can.
So, Eric, I'm going to pause you for just a second. I know time flies when we're having fun.
I know.
We wanted to do this for an hour. We're 12 minutes out, but Chatroom has a few questions for you. I'm going to read this out to you. So does it identify conflicts in specs? So like if spec 1, you say there must be 3 types of beans, and afterwards you create spec 2 that says beans 5 to 9 are always in discount. So like if you had conflicting things, does it recognize?
Yeah, so there's 2 steps in here. So let me kick off. Let me actually kick off. Let me come back to that in just a second. So let me do one thing here. Let me say, let's plan this now. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to say, let's clarify this. So I'm going to ask it to, I'm going to change this to YOLO here. Yep. And then I'm going to change this to using GPT-4.5. I'll say, let's clarify some things. And so it's going to identify things in the spec that are ambiguous.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's then going to ask me questions about that. Like, what do I want to do with these ambiguities? And so to your kind of intent of your question of like, if it finds conflicts, then how does it deal with that? Well, first it's going to look for these ambiguities, and it's going to ask me to fill in the details for that. So it's doing that right now. You'll see it says it's starting MCP servers. So I'm able to use all the tools that I have. So whether it's skills or MCP servers. And so to your question earlier, Sam, if I have conventions already in place, I might have that in a documentation like GitHub repo that my engineering team uses. Mm-hmm. And so I might just have an MCP server that's like my GitHub MCP server that can go read those markdown files of here's how I structure APIs, here's how I here's my coding conventions. And so it can always use those things. That's how I like to go about it. I use things like Astro and Starlight to create those documentation sites. And then that's helpful. So
it's going down the path of clarifying. And while it's doing that, I'm going to pull up one more question here from the chat room. Hawkman is asking, it's very cool, but it's potentially a lot of AI slop that the human has to review. And before you answer that, let me take a stab here, because like it's generating a lot of stuff, right? So I think what Hawkman is trying to say is you will have to review all of that stuff, because otherwise it's like slop in, slop out, right? So you essentially from a single prompt, like you could have given that prompt directly to an AI agent, but then all of this stuff you would have to go through and essentially chew through your context window while it's trying to figure all of this out. So here, you're explicitly reviewing all of that. Is that kind of the big benefit here?
Yeah. So what you're trying to get to, you're trying to get ahead of the AI slop. You're, shifting left or what have you. Like you're trying to make sure that you eliminate the AI slop by being intentional up front. So yes, it generated a bunch of stuff for us in the spec. That's great for us to think about in framing what we want to create. But it's our job now not to just take that and build that. We want to review that and make sure that's exactly what we had in mind. We just didn't communicate it. and make sure it's on paper appropriately. And
Yeah.
so we want to change that and review that as we need.
So if you find something in your user stories or features that are way off from what you had envisioned, would you fix them in the specs here, or would you go back and change your initial prompt and run it again?
I would just change the markdown. So this is
Hmm.
all yours to edit. So I would update this markdown here, the text right here, and just update the spec.
Right. Okay.
So it's starting to ask me questions. Um, oh, it's because I YOLO'd this thing. It continued on. But if I didn't do that, it asked me. It would have paused here and says, "Hey, um, we have a question. You are a single select filter category keeps the mobile UX simpler. Which of these options would you like to do? It even provides me suggestions for options, or I can just answer it with my own answers. And so in this case, I assume it just went through here and answered with just do whatever's recommended essentially, and it answered all of these questions for me. Yeah, so there's single select, and so it's updating my spec based on this clarification loop. And I can see that because one of the things I did earlier was put those changes in my staged. I didn't commit them, but I put them in staged. And so you can see what it does over here is it says in my clarification stage that I ran on this date, I asked this question, and here's the answer to that question. And so we clarified some of those assumptions. And so as a result, we added this functional requirement that says the system must support single select behavior within each filter category. And so it's updating the spec based on that clarification, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to just quickly I'm going to build a technical plan because I know we're running short of time, but you'll notice it guides me through the process. So once it's done with this step, it gives me a quick button that I can just press down here, and I can just say, hey, build this technical plan. Or I can do the slash here and say, plan.
Hmm.
And I could go to spec kit plan. I could also select it, right here from my list of agents, but I'll just say build a technical plan. And then it's going to, again, ask me for what the details are. So I'm going to say I'm going to build with React. It'll run on Azure in Azure App Service and use Azure Blob storage for images and binaries, and use Cosmos DB for uh, structured data. I also want the deployment automated with AZD.
Hmm.
And so now it's going to create that technical plan for me. So it'll start to write more files over here. And then once that's done, I'll be able to start thinking about, implementing this. And so I'm going to, while that's running, just for the sake of time, I'm going to go back to this visual. So we ran through that first 3 steps. We created the spec, we clarified assumptions, we've started building the technical plan. We can run additional clarification loops at that point. We can run that as many times as we want. It's going to just show us kind of the first 5 things that it encounters. And so we can ring it out until we have all of those assumptions out of there. And then we can say, okay, we're good with the spec and the technical plan. Break this down, break these stories down according to this technical plan into tasks. This is one of the things that I find really useful with this approach, because you talked about context earlier and context windows. We can easily overflow and just fill up the context window. If we just stuck in the spec and the plan and tried to have it build this project, there's no way it can do that and still have context. And so we have to break this down into small chunks. Well, that's exactly what this task phase does, is it's going to break this down into small chunks so that
Hmm.
we always have the right context in the context window. Otherwise, it'll go off the rails and it start dreaming things up. And that's not what we want. We always want it grounded with our spec and our plan. And so that would be the next stage. We'll create a task. We'll go through that task step. It will create tasks. Then, getting back to the question that was asked a little bit ago, what happens if we have 3 here and 5 here? This analyze step we will run after we create the tasks. And that's going to take the spec, the plan, and the task list and make sure that they are all in alignment before we ever ask it to implement anything. So we want to make sure there's no contradictions, and it'll go through that same process that we saw in the in Visual Studio Code, where it's going to ask us, hey, we saw this. How do you want to deal with this? What's the right answer? And we can just say, hey, use your recommendations, or we can give it exact details on what to do. And so right now it's creating the plan. It goes out and does research too. So we'll see its research file that it created. So it's generating it right now. We're almost done with that.
This is all real, by the way, folks. Like Eric is
it's real
letting
time.
AI fly.
Yeah, we're creating our coffee app, and it's fun.
No, I mean, to the other comment that was made about AI slop, exactly what you're saying is what it's doing. Like you're getting ahead of the agent and stopping the guesswork. You are analyzing, do my specs match up to my implementation plans? Yeah, tokens are burning. Hawkman says, you are burning stuff.
So here's the beauty of it. I am using premium requests, but it is not charging me for tokens in GitHub Copilot. It's charging me for requests. And so another benefit of SpecKit is it's bundling all this stuff up in a single request. It might be spawning subagents, but every iteration of this is only charging me for a single request. I couldn't care less about how many tokens are being used behind the scenes. And so yes, it is chewing up tokens, but I'm only paying for a request. And so this is like an infinite money glitch, I feel like, in GitHub Copilot today, and maybe someday they will correct the infinite money glitch. But you can see all these things that are happening in these subagents behind the scenes, and I'm just paying for that single one request. So it's kind of cool. So I got an open API spec or description here. And I'm not seeing it here. Why? I don't know. Let me try.
So that's not the running app yet. It's just the API.
No. Yeah, this is just it just created. So it's got a problem with it, and it's probably working on correcting it or something like that. But I can't render it for some reason for right now. But you can see I have the API description for the API that we're going to create. And so again, this is an opportunity for me to correct the AI slop before it creates the code. Here's my data model that it creates. Oh, I don't want to do that. I want to markdown preview this guy. So this is my data model. So it had those objects. So there's the catalog document that I'm creating. That's what I'm going to store inside of Cosmos DB. These are the embedded types like beans and syrups and milk ratios and all the things. So this is my opportunity to review this and say, oh no, like I don't want to name it like this. And I'll find an example of this that probably I'm not seeing one, but like one of the things there we go. I hate naming dates like this, updated at. Like, no, I just want it to be updated. And so I would correct that here, or I would just tell it in my constitution, I never want dates named with a suffix at, right? Things like that. So this is my opportunity to correct that. So it's continuing to generate that. And then that technical plan that it created, this is it. And so on that one simple prompt, it said, here's the structure of this. This is my source code repository and how it's going to be structured. Again, another opportunity for me to correct this before it starts really building. And then it goes through the phases. I'm going to design, I'm going to implement, and on and on. And so it is generating that for me. Once it's done, I can see the research that it did to decide how to do these things. How am I going to host the SPA app and API behind a single app service? Well, here's how I'm going to do that. So these are the questions it internally asked based on the things that I told it I wanted it to do. Things like that. And so you can see all of the researching that it did to make these decisions that maybe just weren't in the model. So it's pretty cool. And then the last thing that's really nice is how do I after it builds all this stuff, how do I actually run it? And so it's telling me, okay, to run this app, here's the things that I'm going to need. I'm going to need Node 22. I'm going to need the AZD tool, Azure CLI. Here's how I would set up my environment variables and how I would run it, things like that. And it's not a one and done. So I can continue to prompt this and say, hey, you know what? This is good, but I forgot to tell you that I actually want this to also run in a Docker container, or I want to use Cosmos in an emulator locally in a Docker container, things like that. So yeah.
Wow, this is a lot of exhaustive work before it actually gets cranking on the implementation.
Well, good observation and good eye. So here is the thing that I would say. I mentioned earlier, I spend way more time writing English than I do writing code today. And the reason is I get the English just right. I'll spend days writing a spec. Let me give you some examples. I pulled this up a second ago. I was just speaking at a conference called CypherCon. And it's a cybersecurity DEF CON style conference. And my son and I, my 17-year-old son wanted to present this year, and he wanted to present on hacking video games. And I said, well, that's great. It's something he does regularly and loves and enjoys, and has taught me so much in this space. But I said, we can't like ethically go live on stage and just hack live games, right? So we need to build a game that has vulnerabilities that we can hack. And so we spent like 3 days working together, building using Spec-Kit, building a plan, a spec, and then building this hackable. The conference theme was a 90s when the internet was great, and so we built a 90s style clicker game. And there we go. Had to wake it up, but it has like 16 vulnerabilities built in. We told it, hey, we want the vulnerabilities to be accessible. Oh, that's not it. There's a special panel that we have. Vulnerabilities to be toggleable, so we can turn them on and off to demo them, things like that. And so we went through the process of just specking out what this game would be like and how it would work. We built a web version, an API, and a Windows version, because there were some Windows things we wanted to show off, and hacking memory and binaries and things like that. And so a Windows version using monogame. And we spent 3 days writing the plan, the spec and the plan, and Spec-Kit built the whole thing. Like the coding agent built the whole thing for us.
Wow.
We had some minor tweaks, but
Yeah.
this is the thing. So the time is spent up front
Mm-hmm.
expressing your intent, and then the agents can take it from there.
But you get a better output on the back end because you spent that time up front.
Exactly. And so you mentioned this at the top of the hour. You mentioned, you know, it's such an exciting time to be building software right now, and I'm having so much fun. And that is exactly it. Like, there is no way I could have built a demo at that kind of quality and detail for a one-off conference before AI coding agents, because it would have taken me a month to build the demo.
Yeah.
And now I can do it in a couple of days.
Yeah, and even just this, like where you just started from a prompt of building a coffee app, like getting to that level of specs and requirements and the flow, that's like half a week gone. And now it's just, a couple of hours to, spec it out and build the whole thing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. What a time to be doing stuff, right?
Yep. So we're not going to certainly get through all of the Spec-Kit process live, because it does take a while. We're using LLMs, but it's the exact same flow throughout. So once we get done with this plan phase, and you can see all the Spec-Kit commands, then we would say, let's analyze that. Sorry, we would clarify, and make sure that there's no assumptions in here, and keep doing that until we wring it out as best we can. Then we would create tasks. And so there's a task command, and that's going to generate a task list that it's going to use. They are, check boxes in Markdown. And so Spec-Kit and the AI coding agent are going to check that off, just like we saw the checklist earlier, as it goes through and implements this. And again, using a single request, which is great. And so it will create that task list for us. We will then go down the path of asking it to analyze all those things together to make sure that it's all consistent. And then once we have all of that, we've got that in a repo that will live forever for our feature that we're creating. And then we can just say, implement. So there's another implement command here, and oh, maybe
Yeah,
there
I
it
see it.
is.
Yep.
And then
Spec.
it's going to go take the spec, the plan, the tasks, and create the code, and then we're off to the races.
Yeah. And on the left hand side, like the way you had your Git repo set up, like if this was to be a moment of time and maybe somebody looks at this app 3 months down the line, or look at it through the lens of another AI agent, like all of your specs are right there, and the
That's correct.
analysis and the research. So it's also easier for other AI agents in a different session to just pick it up and, start working on it.
Yep. And we talked about this earlier. If I decide over here in my plan, you know what? I no longer want to use React. I actually want to go use Vue. Well, I can come over and change the plan. I can use SpecKit to do that. I could just dump this plan entirely and say, hey, let's plan this again. And this time I want to use Vue, and I don't want to use Cosmos. I want to use Postgres. And, I want to use, instead of Azure Identity and Intra ID, I want to use uh, Okta Auth 0 or something like that. Great. I still
Yeah.
have my spec for everything that I want to build. That's still correct. And I can just change the technical implementation of that, create a different plan for that, and go.
Yeah.
And
Sweet.
and
Sweet.
and it's because it's in a Git repo. I don't have to blow this one up either. I could just branch off of here,
Mhm.
create it, update it, and I'm off to the races.
Yeah. Amazing stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, what a time, right?
I know. It's so exciting.
It is exciting. Folks, I know we are having a lot of time, but we want to appreciate your time here as well. I'm sure, like Eric, we can watch this thing go, do its whole thing, and implement this, but it's going to take some time. But yeah, this is fun stuff. So why don't we wrap up in the next 2 minutes, just so we go maybe 10 minutes over. Anything else to point out, Eric? Otherwise, I was just going to show you two quick things from my world.
No, not at all. Like this is that task list that it just created, so you can see how it's planning to chunk this thing up into small, fine-grained. For each user story, here's the tasks that it's going to do, and that's how it's going to maintain that context window. So we got all the way through tasking it. The thing we didn't get through was implementing it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Good
and I can push
stuff.
this up to a repo if people want to take it over and play with it from there. We can push it up
Yeah.
to a repo and they can do that. So yeah.
Yeah, and I will be happily putting it down into a YouTube description so you folks can play around with it. So
Sounds good.
very good stuff. So let me, I'm going to take your
Yeah.
screen down for just a second. Just point out two quick things here. Let me move my screens around so I can share. Where is my share button? So I'm sure many of you have had what's called the Opus moment, which is, a couple of months back when Opus got really, really good. Some folks have been saying it's slopping a little bit, but now you have 4.7 landing, I think today as we were speaking. So might be time to give it a spin and see how a brand new model does with agentic stuff. So one of the things that stuck with me was like in your flow of things, you had task, you had, I forget one other thing, and then you had implement, right? Or task and then analyze and then implement, right? So my world a lot of days is just at the very other end of it, which is implementation things. And it's one thing for the AI agents to generate code, but who's to say that it's actually working code, right? Who's to say it's working? So you mentioned a couple of things with React. You've been doing like Windows apps. So I live in the world of native apps. So this is the stack that me and my team work on. This is Uno Platform. It's an open source stack for you to build cross-platform .NET apps. So essentially, from a single shared code base, we can build an app that runs on iOS or Android. It's all shared, UI, WebAssembly, desktop, iOS, Mac OS, Linux, you name it. But the thing that I really like is the implementation stage of checking to make sure that things are actually, functional. So use all the specking, use all the things to do the upfront research. But then once the AI agents start cranking out code and you're seeing UI, this is where some good MCP tools help. So Eric, you know about Playwright.
Oh yeah.
right, for web apps. So think about this as Playwright for native apps. So we'll do the similar things, like we'll do an init. So again, the agents are grounded, they have all of the docs, but this is where it really, makes the magic shine, because it's a app MCP. So the AI agents can see and interact with your app. So they can click around, they can type in text. So they can really make sure that you're aligning to the feature stories and the specs to make sure what is being built is actually testable based on the features that you pulled in. And this works with any AI agent, any ID of your choice. So this is where, I have a lot of fun building stuff. So a couple of other folks on my team, like we have a whole gallery of things we have built up, which is just unbelievable, UI that will take us, weeks and months to build. Like Winamp, I'm an 80s kid. I grew up with Winamp. Now it's just a couple of hours to bring up a full scale, UI for it. So lots and lots of fun. All of this is just, out in the open for anybody to play around with it. But what a time with all of the AI tools we have, right?
This is great. So this will test Uno apps.
Yep. It'll test all of the UI across iOS, Android, WebAssembly, desktop targets to make sure it's functional and it's responsive and all the good things.
Does it only work with Uno, or would it work with any other
Nope, this is
iOS?
ours. Yeah, this is
Ah,
ours for now.
okay.
Yeah,
This is really
because
cool though.
yeah, So again, it's for .NET devs to have more confidence in what agents are building.
That's great.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is one of the things that I miss is good tools for testing Windows app. Back in the day we had like coded UI tests
yeah,
and stuff like that, but they were all a little fragile. So this is fantastic, man.
yeah. All right, I am gonna stop here and
Do
bring
do
my window back. Go ahead.
can we show my screen one more time before
Yeah,
we
yeah.
close?
I have it up,
Okay.
and here we go.
So I ran that analyze task
Mm.
or step, and so I just maximized my agent window. But you can see this is what it comes back with, and it says, "Hey, this is our report. We have various inconsistencies that we found." So
Oh, there
over
you go.
here it says the spec uses 5 and 10 seconds. So like that exact kind of scenario. Which one should we use? And so then we can go through and say, here's how we should. Here's what we should do to fix that, and we can tell it what to do, or we can just say, hey, based on the recommendations that you have, just use those recommendations and apply them, and it will do that as well. So yeah, that's that scenario, exactly that scenario in action
Yeah.
that it found. So yeah,
Very, very cool. It's directly answering a question that we had in the chat room about
exactly.
conflicting things in specs. So
Yep.
very cool stuff. And Eric, I know you're busy, but thanks for
Yeah,
taking an hour out to come and teach us this stuff. This is
you're
fascinating
welcome.
stuff.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So chat room. Thank you for being with us. Hawkman is saying thanks for the presentation. Very interesting. It's funny. The example is a coffee app. Eric, we work. Oh, so Hawkman maybe at a large coffee
Oh,
company.
interesting.
We shall not name.
Yes, I do. At a large coffee company. Yeah.
Yeah,
Cheers. Great seeing you.
yeah. All right. So, chat room wherever you're joining us from. We saw some Brazil and other parts of the U.S. So thanks for hanging out with us. This has been fun. Always informal. Always, we're learning from each other. So. Cheers everyone, and hope you all have a great rest of your day and be productive in whatever you're doing, and thanks for joining us. We shall see you in 2 weeks time on another Pragmatic AI show. Eric, thank you again, and goodbye everyone.
Thanks.